Hello? Get ready to march through history's wildest war rooms where the strategies are so crazy they just might work. The Trojan horse. All right, history buffs and strategy enthusiasts, gather around for the tale of the OG of military deceptions, the Trojan horse. Picture this. It's ancient Greece, and the Greeks have been camping outside Troy's walls for a grueling 10 years. Yes, a whole decade of war, and no one's winning a Best City Seeger award. Enter the Greeks' next-level strategy. They build a massive wooden horse. We're not talking a cute carousel pony, folks. This is a beast big enough to hide a select group of warriors inside. The Greeks then play it cool, pretending to sail away and leaving the horse as a gift. Seriously, no gift receipts or anything. Now, the Trojans, seeing the horse, were probably debating to re-gift or not to re-gift. Spoiler alert, they drag the horse inside the city. Big mistake. Night falls, and out come the Greek soldiers from the horse's belly, unlocking the gates for their buddies who just sailed back. Surprise! The city of Troy falls because someone couldn't resist a giant wooden horse. So what's the takeaway here? If your enemy leaves a giant horse outside your city, maybe, just maybe, look a gift horse in the mouth. Or better yet, build a giant wooden mousetrap, just in case. Operation Paul Bunyan. Next up on our list of wild military antics is Operation Paul Bunyan, which sounds more like a lumberjack competition than a military operation, right? Well, strap in, because this tale from the Korean DMZ in 1976 is all about tree trimming, military style. The backstory. Tensions were high at the DMZ, and a simple act of cutting down a poplar tree turned deadly when 2 U.S. soldiers were killed by North Korean forces. Talk about taking tree hugging to a new level. Now, instead of escalating with firepower, the U.S. escalated with more tree trimming. But this wasn't just any landscaping job. Picture this. A full military parade featuring troops, tanks, and even B-52 bombers, all there to watch a tree get a haircut. Overkill? Definitely. Effective? Absolutely. The North Koreans, faced with this overwhelming show of force, could only watch as the tree was dramatically trimmed by none other than a squad of carefully supervised soldiers. The message was clear. Don't mess with our trees. And so, Operation Paul Bunyan not only avenged a poplar, but also showed how sometimes the mightiest weapon in your arsenal can be a chainsaw, as long as it's wielded with a ridiculous amount of backup. The empty fort strategy. Ever heard the phrase, bluffing your way to victory? Well, ancient China's Zhuge Liang should be the poster child for that motto. Welcome to the empty fort strategy, a masterclass in psychological warfare that's as bold as it is brainy. So, here's the scoop. Zhuge Liang, a legendary strategist, found himself in a pickle. His troops were few, his enemies were many, and frankly, his chances were looking as thin as a noodle in a chopstick factory. What's a strategist to do? Throw a party, apparently. When enemy forces approached his fort, instead of beefing up defenses, Zhuge Liang did the unthinkable. He opened the gates wide and sat on the fort walls playing the lute. Yes, a lute. No arrows, no swords, just sweet, sweet music. His rival, suspicious of such a serene setup, thought it had to be a trap. Surely no one would be this chill unless they had an ace, or an army, up their sleeve, they thought. So they turned tail and ran, leaving Zhuge Liang to smirk over his lute strings. This audacious act of calm in the face of calamity not only saved his fort, but also cemented his status as a tactical genius. It teaches us a valuable lesson. Sometimes the best way to face a problem is not with force, but with the confidence of a cat who knows it's got the cream. The Horses of Night. Time to turn the clock back to 1552, when Ivan the Terrible really lived up to his name during the siege of Kazan. What's a fearsome ruler to do when conventional siege tactics don't cut it? Use livestock as a makeshift army, obviously. So here's Ivan, eyeing the fortified city of Kazan, and he thinks, why not add some flair to this fight? Literally, he orders his troops to tie torches to the horns of cattle and sends this blazing bovine brigade towards the enemy walls under the cover of night. Imagine being a Tatar soldier on watch. You're chilling, probably dreaming about your next meal, and suddenly you see a horde of fiery beasts stampeding your way. It's dark, it's scary, and it looks like a demonic BBQ is heading straight for you. Panic mode activated. The Tatars, understandably freaked out, thought they were up against some supernatural force or a massive incoming army. Chaos ensued, morale plummeted, and the psychological impact was just as damaging as any physical attack. This fiery ruse by Ivan not only caused confusion among the defenders, but also cemented his reputation as a leader who was both creative and a bit terrifying. It's a classic case of psychological warfare with a twist. Never underestimate the power of a few well-lit cattle to turn the tide of battle. The Ghost Army. Next up, let's dive into a tale of trickery from World War II that sounds like it's straight out of a Hollywood script. Meet the Ghost Army, the Allied forces' secret weapon that wasn't actually a weapon at all. It was an army of artists and actors equipped with the power of pretend. During the war, the Ghost Army, officially known as the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, was tasked with one crucial mission: to fool Hitler. How? By using inflatable tanks, fake radio transmissions, and sound effects that could mimic a whole battalion on the move. Yes, they basically carried a war theater in their backpacks. Imagine German reconnaissance planes flying overhead, spotting what looks like an array of tanks ready for battle. Only if they'd landed, they'd find out they could pop those tanks with a pin. The Ghost Army could set up a fake airbase or a dummy tank setup overnight, then pack up and vanish before the enemy could even blink. Their performances were so convincing that they managed to divert German forces multiple times, saving countless lives and shifting the focus away from real Allied operations. It's like being in a high-stakes game of poker, but instead of playing your cards right, you're just making them up as you go along. So, thanks to the Ghost Army, we learned that sometimes the best defense in war isn't a good defense. It's a great deception. Hannibal's Vinegar Rock. Marching on in our saga of bizarre battle strategies, we hit the Alps with none other than Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian commander who really didn't like taking the easy route. When faced with the daunting Alps blocking his path to Rome, Hannibal didn't just find a way. He made one. Now, Hannibal was known for thinking outside the box, or in this case, outside the boulder. His army came across a massive rockslide that blocked their path. Instead of turning back or climbing over, Hannibal got his hands on a huge supply of vinegar. Yes, vinegar, the stuff you might use to dress your salad. But instead of making a giant Caesar salad, Hannibal used the vinegar to soak the rocks and then heated them up. The sudden temperature change caused the rocks to crack and crumble. Science in action, folks! It's not just good for volcanoes in your school science fair. With the path cleared, Hannibal's troops, including his famous war elephants, could continue their march towards Rome, proving that sometimes the best way to overcome an obstacle is a little bit of kitchen condiment and a whole lot of ingenuity. This epic moment in military history not only showcases Hannibal's strategic brilliance, but also his ability to integrate a bit of early chemical engineering into warfare. So next time you're stuck, maybe reach for the vinegar. Just don't expect to move mountains, or maybe do. The Circassian Circle. Riding into the spotlight now is a dazzling display of military choreography known as the Circassian Circle. But this isn't your typical dance-off. It's a lethal tactic used by Russian cavalry against the Ottomans in the 18th century. Imagine a battlefield turned into a ballroom where every step could be your last. The scene is set during the numerous Russo-Turkish wars, where the Russians wanted to add a little spin to their cavalry charges. Literally. The Circassian Circle involves cavalry troops forming a massive rotating wheel, horses galloping, and soldiers firing at the center as they circle around. It's like a merry-go-round if the horses were real, and the music was the sound of muskets. This whirling dervish of doom was not just for show. It served a deadly purpose, disorienting enemy forces who were unprepared for such a dynamic assault. The Ottomans, faced with this swirling cyclone of steel and horseflesh, often found themselves in disarray, making it hard to target a constantly moving and firing enemy. Why was it so effective? Because it combined shock, awe, and a bit of theater into a tactical package. It kept the enemy guessing and the adrenaline pumping. Plus, it's proof that sometimes the best way to confuse your enemy is to put on a performance that they just can't decode. So, the next time you find yourself in a tricky situation, maybe consider spinning around a few times. It worked for the Russians, though your results might vary. Dazzle camouflage. Next on our list of military mindbenders is Dazzle camouflage, a fashion statement on the high seas during World War I that left enemy submarines more confused than a chameleon in a bag of Skittles. This wasn't your typical attempt to blend in. No, it was about standing out, loudly. Imagine you're a German U-boat captain peering through your periscope, trying to target an Allied ship. But instead of seeing a typical gray battleship, you see wild, geometric patterns zipping across the hull in a kaleidoscope of colors. The goal? To mess with your sense of depth, speed, and direction. Dazzle camouflage, inspired by Cubist art, was like Picasso took a side gig in naval design. The ships were painted with bold shapes and contrasting colors, making it ridiculously hard for enemies to estimate the vessel's true heading or speed. It's like trying to hit a bullseye when the target is having a rave. Did it work? Well, it didn't make ships invisible, but it did make them less hittable, which in the murky calculations of war counts as a win. The Dazzle ships sailed through World War I, turning the ocean into a moving art gallery that confused periscopes and torpedoes alike. So next time you want to avoid detection, maybe throw on some mismatched patterns and strut confidently. If nothing else, you'll dazzle with your style. Operation Chariot. Last but certainly not least on our tour of crazy military strategies, we land on Operation Chariot. Think of it as a high-stakes heist movie, except the target was a massive dry dock in Nazi-occupied Saint-Nazaire, France, during World War II. The stakes? Enormous. The plan? Borderline insane. The British knew that the German battleship Tirpitz was a major threat, lurking like a shark in European waters, but it needed a specific dock for repairs, which was exactly what our daring allies decided to hit. The weapon of choice? Not a bomb, not a fleet, but an old destroyer packed to the brim with explosives. In the dead of night, British commandos, disguised as German soldiers, sailed this Trojan destroyer straight into the dock gates. It was a suicide mission, but with a twist. Everyone planned to escape first. Talk about a job where you really want your 2 weeks' notice. When the explosives finally went off, they didn't just destroy the dock. They effectively marooned the Tirpitz, leaving it dockless and dramatically shifting naval power. The commandos' audacity and cunning saved countless Allied ships and turned the tide of the naval war. So there you have it. Sometimes to win a war, you have to think like a pirate, act like an actor, and maybe, just maybe, blow stuff up strategically. And that's a wrap on history's sneakiest victories. If you enjoyed these wild rides through military madness, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment with which strategy blew your mind the most.